Hello everyone, welcome to the channel Renewable Energy Study Group. In this session, today we're going to be talk about how to calculate a family's carbon footprint. As you know that the carbon footprint and the climate change is a very fundamental important concept nowadays, as we see that there is a huge effect is happening because of the climate change, and that is why it is mandatory for the organizations, the family, and the individual member also to know how exactly the carbon footprint that we can calculate. Because once we know that we can calculate the carbon footprint, then we can find some kind of a solution to reduce this carbon footprint at individual level. So now we're going to be start with how to calculate the family's carbon footprint. So basically, whenever generally we the calculating the family's carbon footprint, most of the cases we have to consider the electricity consumption of the family, because that is a quite important concept, because family is utilizing the electricity for their running the home appliances. Second most important is the LPG consumption. For cooking the food purpose, we require the LPG at the family, and that is why this we have to be considered. And the next is the traveling purpose. This is the three major concept or the fundamentals that we have to be considered whenever we are deciding to calculate the family's carbon footprint over here. So now we're going to be consider one case study to calculate the family's carbon footprint in tons of CO2 equivalent, because we are calculating the carbon footprint in terms of tons of CO2 equivalent. Because as we know that family is utilizing the electricity, LPG cylinder, transportation services, this emission we have to convert in the form of an CO2 emission, that is a carbon dioxide emission. So let's say a family of 10 member will going to be considered, who is using the 2 LPG cylinders on monthly basis and also utilizing the 600 kilowatt hour of an grid electricity or the power. Roughly the 100 liters of the diesel will be required for the transportation of each month. So this is a exactly requirement of an individual family, or generally most of the families that we can identify of the 10 member who are using the 2 LPG cylinders, 600 kilowatt hour of an grid electricity, and roughly the 100 liters of an diesel for the transportation services. Now we have to consider these factors. We have to convert it into the CO2 emission terminologies, and we have to be calculate the carbon footprint. So we'll start with the LPG cylinder. LPG for the cooking has the annual carbon footprint, because this is given in terms of the monthly footprint actually. How much the monthly consumption will be there. So we have to convert it in the form of an annual consumption. So to calculate the annual footprint generated by the LPG cylinder, that is 2.95 we have to consider. 2.95 is the emission factor we can say. That is 2.95 kg of the carbon dioxide has been emitted by burning the 1 kg of the LPG cylinder, or we can say the 1 kg of an LPG gas. And this particular factor has been calculated by the formulas and will going to be considered directly in the calculation over here. Generally for the LPG cylinder, we'll consider it as 2.95 kg of the CO2 emission per kg burn of the LPG. Multiply by 14.2 we'll consider, because generally for the housing LPG cylinder which is been available, this is been measured in terms of an kg that we can say, and generally it is getting in terms of an 14.9 kg of the LPG gas in one cylinder. You can consider the commercial cylinder also, which is having the 19 kg of the gas filled in that particular cylinder. So based upon how much amount of the kg has of the gas has been filled in one cylinder, that we can read from that particular LPG cylinder, and that we can consider over here. But generally for the residential purposes, we'll consider 14.2 kg of an gas filled in one LPG cylinder. Multiply by 2, because we have a 2 cylinders on monthly basis. Multiply by 12, that is of every year we have a 12 months. So we consider as annual carbon footprint generated due to the LPG consumption. Divided by the 1000. 1000 it is because whatever the answer we are getting, it is getting in terms of an kg of the CO2 emitted. We have to get this answer in terms of an tons of the CO2 emitted, because this factor is very high because of the kgs of the CO2 emitted by LPG cylinder, traveling purpose, grid electricity. It is not feasible to consider this factor in terms of an kg of the CO2 emitted actually. And that is why we have to divide by 1000 to get the answer in terms of an tons of CO2 emitted on the annual basis. So here we'll consider 2.95 as an emission factor of the LPG gas or cylinder, that is of 2.95 kg of CO2 generated per kg burn of an LPG, multiply by 14.2, multiply by 2, multiply by 12, divided by 1000, and we get 1 ton of an CO2 has been emitted annually basis for the LPG consumption of the family. Second is that we have to be consider the grid energy or electricity that we have to be considered, because as per the data which has been given in the case study, 600 kilowatt hour, this much amount of an electricity has been consumed by the family member. So we have to be consider the factor, that is of emission factor you can consider like 0.82 kg of the CO2 has been emitted by consumption of 1 kilowatt hour of an electricity. This factor also has been calculated based upon the several factor. We do the calculation and we'll get this particular answer of 0.82 actually. That also will going to be see some extra videos over on our channel. So 0.82 kg of the CO2 gas has been emitted per kg burn of 1 kilowatt hour or per kg usage of 1 kilowatt hour of an electricity that you can say. So if family is utilizing the 600 kilowatt hour of an electricity, so every 1 kilowatt hour is actually responsible for production of 0.82 kg of the carbon dioxide. Multiply by 12 because in 1 year we'll consider the 12 months and this data has been given in the monthly basis. Divide by 1000 and we get an answer of 5.90 tons of an CO2. Means annually due to this kind of an grid power consumption, 5.90 tons of an CO2 has been emitted by the family members. Next is that annual carbon footprint of the diesel car. We'll consider the family is utilizing the car and which has been runs on the diesel fuel, and monthly consumption of the diesel will be of 100 liter of the diesel will be required. So we have to be consider once again the emission factor of carbon dioxide emission factor that you can say 2.63. So 2.63 kg of the CO2 gas has been emitted per kg burn of the diesel fuel that you can say. Whenever we are burning the 1 kg of the diesel fuel or 1 liter of the diesel fuel, it will responsible for generation of 2.63 kg of the carbon dioxide. This is also we have to calculate from the particular calculation and then we will get this particular emission factor. So in the calculation, we will directly take this particular emission factor from the standard data and we'll just do the further calculation. Multiply by 12 and divide by 1000. And from the diesel car or the diesel fuel that you can say annual basis, 3.16 tons of the carbon dioxide has been emitted by the family. So due to the LPG consumption, electricity consumption and the diesel consumption, so whenever we add this particular data, we'll get the answer near about 10.06 tons of an carbon dioxide has been emitted by the family on the annual basis. So in this way, we can calculate the family's carbon footprint in terms of an tons of CO2 equivalent, because we are converting this particular consumption in terms of an carbon dioxide emission, and it is helpful for calculation and reduction of the carbon footprint also. Hello everyone, we are belongings to the Renewable Energy Study Group. So we are providing the various courses based upon the renewable sector like the solar power plant designing and various softwares, wind power plant designing, introduction to the wind power system, biogas power plant, rainwater harvesting, carbon footprint calculation, waste management, and multi more courses based upon the renewable sector. You can visit to our site of www.renewableenergystudygroup.in. You will find the variety of the courses of the renewable sector. We are specifically offering the bundle of the courses, which is consisting of the 20 to 10 to 5 based upon the course to course. The bundle will be available on the discounted price. The discounted price and the offer has been given in our description box. You can visit to description box. You can find the variety of the courses. You can read the blogs on the renewable energy on our website also to endeavor your knowledge in the field of renewable sector. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel to get a more amount of an information based upon the renewable sector.